Chapter 0, Lesson 8, only one more lesson after this. This lesson is entirely on multiplying fractions or multiplying mixed numbers. Okay, we will do one last video for division and then the chapter's over. So let's get started. Our notes, improper fraction is a fraction in which the numerator is larger than the denominator. So you should be very familiar with an improper fraction. That's a term we've talked about probably since 4th or 5th grade. Examples of improper fractions. How about 9/7 and 3/2? You can write your own examples if you'd like. Just make sure the numerator is larger than the denominator. Okay? Non-examples would be a fraction with a numerator that's smaller than the denominator, like 4/5, or even a fraction where the numerator is equal to the denominator, like 5/5. Okay, so improper fraction is a fraction in which the numerator is larger than the denominator. Last bit of notes, we're going to multiply fractions, we're going to multiply mixed numbers, and in order to do that, both numbers must be in fraction form. So it will be important for us to change those mixed numbers into improper fractions or change whole numbers into fractions by putting that hidden 1 in the denominator. The good news here is we do not need to find the least common denominator. No LCD for multiplying. In fact, if you find yourself finding an LCD, you're doing too much work. So don't do it. Our last note here is that we are going to make the problem easier by simplifying before we multiply. Now, this is a big deal for me in 7th grade. Okay, we want to simplify before we multiply. You can make your problem a lot easier if you do that, and we're going to review that in just a second. Okay, so let's jump right into some examples. Example 1, 4 and 1/5 times 6 and 1/9. Remember, we cannot multiply until we turn both of these into fraction form. So to do that, we take the denominator and we multiply by the whole number and we add the numerator. So 5 times 4 is 20 plus 1 is 21. And the denominator stays exactly the same, 21/5. Okay. Same thing for our second mixed number, 6 and 1/9. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 1 is 55. And our denominator stays exactly the same. So now we want to do some simplifying, okay? This is a mandatory step in 7th grade. You need to start looking for these common factors to make the problems a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to hide common factors in a lot of these problems, so you need to be on the lookout. So we take a look at the two numbers that are diagonal from each other, so the denominator of our first fraction and the numerator of our second fraction. And we say, well, what common factors do they have? Well, I know they can both be divided by 1 because all numbers have that 1 as a factor, but these two numbers can also be divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 55 divided by 5 is 11. So we can do that simplifying, and we're already making our problem a little bit easier. Okay, let's look at our other diagonal, 21 and 9. I know they can both be divided by 1, but that doesn't help us. So we need to look for a bigger common factor than 1, and they can both be divided by 3. So 21 divided by 3 is 7. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And now we can go ahead and do our multiplication. Now we've turned this into an easier problem before we even get started. So to multiply fractions, once they're in fraction form, of course, we multiply straight across, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. 7 times 11 is 77, and 1 times 3 is 3. Of course, this is an improper fraction, so we definitely don't want to leave it in improper fraction form. So we do our division bar on the denominator, right? And we drop our 77 into the house. Now remember, you do not ever want to put a decimal here. If you put a decimal here, you're changing your answer to decimal form, and that's not what we want. We want a mixed number for our final answer. So we'll do some division, but we're going to stop as soon as we get to a remainder. So 3 goes into 7 twice. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract and we get 1. Bring down the 7. 3 goes into 17 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. subtract, and get a 2. Now you're probably very tempted to put a decimal here and then a 0, but do not do that. Stop right now. Stop dividing because we have enough information to write our mixed number. 25 is the whole number because 3 goes into 77, 25 whole times. 2 is our remainder, which also is our numerator. And 3 has been our denominator the whole time, so it's going to stay our denominator. So our final answer here is 25 and 2/3. Okay, let's see one more. Next one's a little bit quicker because it's a whole number times a fraction. So 12 times 7/9. Again, we have to change both of our numbers to be fractions, so we're going to put the hidden 1 underneath the 12. So that becomes 12 over 1. And 7/9 is already a fraction, so we don't have to do anything to that. Just write it down and let's start to simplify. So look at the first diagonal, 1 and 7. The only thing I can divide out of them is a 1, and 1 does not simplify anything, so I have to go to my other diagonal, 12 and 9. 12 and 9 share 3 as a factor, so we can divide them both by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So now we can go ahead and do our multiplication. 4 times 7 is 28. And 1 times 3 is 3. Again, we end up with an improper fraction. So we want to change our improper fraction to a mixed number. So we drop the 28 into the house and we divide. Remember, no decimals. If you put a decimal into that problem, you're going to get a decimal answer. So we're just going to divide until we get to a remainder. So 3 does not go into 2, but it does go into 28. 3 goes into 28 9 times, so my 9 goes above the 8. 9 times 3 is 27. And I subtract and get a 1. I'm tempted to put my decimal, but I won't, so I know to stop. I have a remainder, and that remainder becomes my numerator. My denominator was 3, and it stays 3. So I put my 1 here, my 3 here, and my final answer is 9 and 1/3. Okay, so this video reviews a lot of things. It reviews how to multiply fractions and mixed numbers and whole numbers. It also reviews how to simplify before you multiply, which is really important because the only time we can do that simplifying is for multiplying. So let's do it when we can. It makes the problems easier. And it also reviews one more time how to take an improper fraction and turn it into a mixed number. So a lot of information in this short video. It would benefit you to watch each of those pieces again to make sure you really see all the things that are going on in this lesson. Okay, go ahead and do your practice problems. If you have any questions, bring them to class tomorrow.